Hello, and welcome to Escaping Dystopia. My name is Roy. I'll be your host for this evening. Tonight is episode 87. It is November 27th, 2019. The Surreal situation. So, switching away a little bit from our more recent format, I'm just going to go through stuff, talk about things a little bit tonight. Sometimes the prep time's not all there. So, anyway, one of the things that we like to start off with the show here is Spaceship Earth. It's one of the big long-term concepts that I'm trying to work on, and it's central to the book. The notion that this planet that we're on is basically the spaceship that our species has to explore the universe with, and currently it's overheating. There was a global accord with pretty much every single country in the world was signed on, called the Paris Climate Accord. The idea being, because we understand some of the climate forcing, some of the factors, I should say, forcing the climate change that we're seeing. So the idea was to get a little better control over that and all work together to get that resolved. The President of the United States has decided to pull the United States out of that Paris Climate Accord. That will officially take effect essentially a year from this last couple weeks, so right before the election. This is as there's been more public pressure building to deal with this issue. This next generation of teenagers now aware of what's going on in the world are not so steeped in the fake news, Fox News paradigm of how to deal with news, so they don't ignore and dismiss the science behind global warming, and are pretty concerned about it. The next generation coming up after that, which is my kiddos, is going to be damn near militant. So I want to, I don't know, I'm just going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about this all the time. It's really the most important thing. So that's why I'm leading off the show with it every week or month, I guess, when we do shows now. But the reason this show was started, Escaping Dystopia, you saw some of this stuff this last week and the last couple weeks. And I'm going to move on and start talking about the Impeachment Inquiry. Now, things were a little bit odd about it because, again, you have to remember, Republicans were complaining about these secret interviews and hidden witnesses in the basement, and they had a secure room, and then, oh, you guys haven't even taken a vote to make this official. And each time they've done these complaints, then as the process has moved forward, they've been addressed. And these people came out and publicly testified. And Republicans had plenty of chances to deal with this. And so it's been very strange to see. We've seen all of the major witnesses. It doesn't look like we're going to get many more from the White House. As they basically told everybody to not show up. There was a court ruling today about McGann. He's the White House counsel who is more involved with the obstruction of justice, involved with the Mueller report. It's going to be curious to see how much they roll the Mueller report findings and the obstruction of justice involved into the impeachment, the articles of impeachment that they're going to be drafting. The reason being, Bill Barr, who we've now seen is very clearly a very strong Trump advocate, as opposed to a rule of law advocate, and he was really able to intercept and reinterpret the Mueller report findings. I believe the Mueller report was, I think his hope was that Congress would have taken this step based on that. But it's really kind of odd because you'll recall this scheme that came out through the impeachment inquiry, and this has to do with Ukraine. And for those of you unaware, they had been essentially trying to blackmail the Ukraine, or bribe them, if you will. This is, I think, the correct way to say it. Saying, if you do this for us, you get this. And what the exchange, right, that quid pro quo, that something for something, was a personal political favor for the president. And so this is what's kind of weird about it, because the whole thing was to get the president of Ukraine to say publicly that the vice president's son was under investigation. The whole point of this was to create a situation and a narrative on Fox where they can talk about how Biden is corrupt and he represents the swamp. And that's the whole point of this. And so the idea was to get Ukraine to say that they were doing this, so then all of Trump world could then deflect any charges of corruption against them by pointing directly back at Hunter Biden. And this investigation that had now been publicly announced by the president of Ukraine. So that was the whole idea behind this whole thing, was to get them to announce that this was happening so they'd have this insurance for the next election. And by the way, just as a quick history note, that was what they got in trouble in Watergate, it was election meddling and trying to mess with things. That was what led to that impeachment. So the overall scheme has become very clear. They blew away a lot of these conspiracy theories. This is what was really, really disturbing to me about watching this on TV, because I want to live in a world where I can respect the other side, as it were, right? As the parties work to solve problems and they deal with the same sets of facts in the same shared reality. And what we saw in this hearing was that they do not, that we are very, very, very far apart in basic facts. And one of the things, I've seen this happen, and I experience it quite a bit as I have a lot of my discussions and, talk to people all the time, and I've seen this disconnect, and I've felt, but man, to see it so stark on TV with people who are supposed to be, respected people, and just throwing out these ridiculous conspiracy theories. So that was really... That was disheartening, and I think I'm going to have to admit that I was wrong about something here, because my general outline for how this would go is I felt that once the facts came out and things were clear, and it was obvious that Donald had done something that was well beyond the pale, and I think in most circumstances, if you ask any Republican, if you describe these circumstances and then put Obama or Clinton's name on it, it would just, obviously they would talk about how ridiculously corrupt and horrible that action was. So, I had thought that there would be that some level of integrity that would come out. And you'd see that in the Senate, because these are people who, because again, they've got 6-year terms, they can actually outlast the president pretty easily. And we haven't seen that at all. And I thought that there would be a time when the Republicans in the Senate would be like, look, this is so bad, you're so toxic to us, you're gonna have to go. But that hasn't really happened. And looking at how things are changing now, and as they do this, it's I see this a lot, because you see public pressure come against a certain idea, right? And you see these facts come out over and over. Oh, he did this, they did that. No, this Ukraine conspiracy, that Ukraine hacked our election is a Russian conspiracy. You have these very respected people coming out and saying very clearly, no, this is wrong. No, they publicly tried to humiliate me because there was no way they could do this scheme while I was still there, so they had to get me out of the way. So, as the whole scheme comes out, it's just, they deny everything. And just, you literally had, on the last couple days of the inquiry, the news come out that the ranking member of the committee, Devin Nunes, is involved. Like, he was literally talking to one of the people who's involved with this conspiracy to dig up dirt on Biden's family. Literally, the ranking member. And every time he's been asking questions this whole time, he knew that. And he's throwing all these misdirections. Oh, we don't get to do this. Oh, we don't get to do that. He's trying to actually raise this during the hearing. So I didn't think Republicans would go this low. I thought they would turn and the facts. But I think a lot of this has to do with the public. And because Fox, and I don't know if anybody out there who sees this has seen how Fox has covered this impeachment, but you need to understand Fox News was started by a man named Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes was the media guru, shall we say, for Richard Nixon. And Ailes had always felt that if Nixon had somebody out there arguing his case, he would not have had to leave office. He would have gotten away with what he did. And so that's what the Fox News paradigm is testing now, is if they do have this advocate out there constantly either confusing, attacking critics, going everywhere, doing things, is that going to be enough to let them get away with it? So yeah, they stooped a lot farther than I thought. And I was hoping there would be a lot more integrity. I didn't expect Lindsey Graham to do this kind of stuff. But there's been a creeping control over the Republican Party and the conservative ideology that's happened very, very continuously, and with a continuous pattern of where they'll push it a little bit and drag people along a little bit. I'm going to talk about that a little bit here in a little bit. So this is some of the impeachment dynamics, and this is the next thing I was going to talk about. So it's very likely the House is going to impeach him. The evidence is very clear. He's very clearly abused his power. He's very clearly gone against his oath of office. This is what he's doing is large sums of money to get somebody to do something. That's bribery. That's what that is. The Democrats are using that word because that word is in the Constitution, specifically saying we don't want our public servants to use their power to do this stuff. And it's so bad that if they do, we have a mechanism for removing them from power. That's what impeachment is. It's not a small thing. And that's why, and I think Pelosi knew what it is, but it's also just a single thing, and these are just words on paper. All of this stuff. And that's the test that we're seeing now, is how much do these words on paper mean? And it's a big test. It's so the danger here again is if they get away with it and this becomes a purely partisan play where again it's okay to do if you're a Republican, but if a Democrat did any of this kind of stuff, and I will say this, and you can mark my words here, after this, if he ends up being held accountable and either removed for office or is tainted so badly that he loses quite badly the election, and Republicans lose a lot of stuff, they will become the most sensitive to corruption people ever. And they will act like they were like that the whole time. And they will act like every single little thing that any other Democrat does is as bad or worse than all of the things that Trump has done. Mark those words, because you're going to see it. The false equivalency that you will see in the next few years will blow your mind. So just get ready. To understand how mind-blowing this hypocrisy is. So over the last few weeks, the son of the president came out with a book. And that book came out and it was on the #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and had a little symbol next to it. And what that symbol next to it represents is it is, yes, indeed, the best-selling book in the country this last year, and there happen to be some really large orders. What that means generally is somebody buys a ton of these books, like the RNC, the Republican National Committee, later shows that they bought roughly about $100,000 worth of this book to give out and give away. And there will be other large orders of things like this, because this has been an effective way over the years to funnel money to people. Again, though, you need to understand the person that we're talking about here is the son of the president. And this is one of the same sons who would go on the news and attack Biden and their family for what happened with Hunter. Now, the thing that's really, really disturbing about this, and what's probably one of the most disgusting aspects about this, for anybody who has family in the military or has served this country, because if you do, you have more in your family than have ever served from Donald's family, is that Biden has two sons. Had, I should say. He will have, depending on how you want to say this, but one of them has passed away because he had brain cancer, because he served honorably in the military. And that we have a political situation where Republicans are attacking Joe Biden for his son and not mentioning his son and what his son gave to this country. It just gives you a good idea of how low they are. And that's what makes it difficult, because people who are casual observers of this kind of stuff, they don't see how nasty that kind of attack is, and don't quite understand what the people who are dealing with this all the time are dealing with now, and why we're using words like fascist and Führer and Nazis, and because that's how bad these people are. Sorry. Oh yeah, speaking of which, I mean, this is a tough show to do because of the war criminal thing. So this has happened again in the last few weeks. The president has picked up on some right-wing media, which is now very overrun with these trolls, and all the decent folks, all the like semi or even like partially decent folks of the right wing are gone. Right? They've been gone. All your good, your moral and integrity Republicans, those guys are gone. Right? They've all gone independent or someplace else. They're not in the Republican Party. They're not part of this base anymore. So what's driving this base is now this nut job right. It really is. And that's what's driving right-wing media, and that's what's pushing this stuff. And that's why the president pardoned 3 war criminals. This is one of the dangers. This is really bad. Because it sets up, again, another dynamic. And I've got a friend on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure she won't watch this, but she's been praising one of these people. And what this person did was ordered the soldiers under him, other young men, to gun down just some kids riding their bikes in the street. And they went through the court, and they brought the witnesses in, and all of these guys had witnesses that were other soldiers testifying against them and convicting them for doing these things. And this was murder. And he's letting them go and walk away. He wants them to come up on stage and dance with them. And this is one of the things, and this is the dynamic, again, why the duopoly is so dangerous, because you start to set up this thing. In reality, just to give an example, Elizabeth Warren has 3 siblings who are veterans, there's 3, each one of them served more than anybody, again, in the Trump family ever has in the history of the country. But they're going to go after it. And they're going to try and set up this dynamic, as I got an email today from the campaign, about how it's Americans versus socialists. And they're going to set up this thing where anybody who doesn't stand with the war criminals is a criminal. This is bad, folks. And we need to step back. Dem Debate update. All right. So, the Dem Debate last Wednesday, about a week ago, I guess, or maybe last week, I don't know, a few days ago. These are pretty standard affairs until we can boil it down a little bit. I mean, they're going to be more, somebody got in a few good shots, somebody took a few shots. The dynamic that you're seeing over the last few weeks in the Democratic race has been very interesting. The entrance of the race of 2 people, Deval Patrick and Mike Bloomberg. So Patrick is really just, to me, that is just, like, because he's at most a regionally known name. He was a 2-term governor in Massachusetts, which means he has pretty much zero appeal outside of the Northeast, like in any way, shape, or form. What? And then Bloomberg, I can kind of understand, because the idea here is that they're scared. And they're scared that, and it's Warren doing well that really scared. Because one of the things that Warren brings to the table is a fundamental notion that we need to change some things in this country, which I agree with. She's not going to be able to, and no one will be, without a larger majority. And given the way the Supreme Court is now, everything decent that passes for the next while is going to die in the courts. They pack the courts with Trump people. They pack the Supreme Court. The way the rule of law works in this country, it's going to be a long slog. I'm sorry, folks. We fucked up so bad, and this is why, and I'm trying to I don't try and get down on this, but one of the big themes that I followed for a long time in watching politics and looking over the long arc of history and the way the U.S. has acted and the decisions we've made, it's watching an empire crumble. And it is. It's watching it from the inside being like, well, that's obviously a stupid idea. Why? Okay, we did that. Well, how about over here? Can we? No, we can't just be, but that's obvious. We all know we can't do it. And you're seeing in the entrance of the race why we can't. And what's causing the problem. And this is something that, again, I've said fundamentally, it's income inequity and income inequality. And then you have this billionaire joining the race like, well, that's just fine. I'll just buy a bunch of advertising. I don't even have to go to debates. I don't even have to get donors. Ha ha ha, I should just... What? How can you possibly think this? And the fact that he does even think this, and that he's not even the only billionaire doing it. It just tells you, like, there's something really, really wrong with our approach to things, and where the money is, and who's using it for what. It just becomes very clear, and that's where Warren comes in, because one of the things why I really liked her from the get-go is because one of the things that she started her career focusing on was this notion that people go bankrupt because they get sick. And that shouldn't... Why? And if you look at it now, people are like, well, yeah, obviously, because, I mean, it costs $4,000 for 2 stitches. If you get cancer, you might as well just sell your house. Why? And I saw this thing the other day that with people who get serious illnesses, like 2/3 of them declare bankruptcy. It's there's a fundamental thing that's broken in this country, and for some reason I just don't think this billionaire media mogul is gonna fundamentally change things, because there needs to be that thing. There's been some other silliness with the Dem Debate. There can only be one nominee. We haven't even had any voting yet. And there's already people complaining that cable channels don't feature them enough. And as someone, and I know this is weird, and I know nobody believes me when I talk about this for politics, I don't have cable, I don't watch cable, I don't recommend that people do. I know there's some talented folks who spend a lot of time on cable, but it's just, so much of it is such a waste. And that's one thing that I do think that has changed and will change moving forward, is that candidates and campaigns that are able to connect directly with their supporters will do better than those who have to media filter it. Because, well, one of the things that came out with the Bloomberg situation is that Bloomberg, the media organization, doesn't allow people to investigate Bloomberg the person, Bloomberg the family, Bloomberg the foundation. And I start to wonder how many of these other media organizations have either reciprocal deals with him or other situations with really rich and powerful people that they can't talk about, or if somebody else talks about, they have to go stop those people. And that's one of the things that I think has happened with Warren as she's risen in the polls and as this has become a reality. And with Bernie, it was never close to, again, his ceiling is not that high. And as you see all these other people go up and down, you don't see his numbers changing that much because they're not. But as she became a reality, you saw this a bit of panic set in. Which to me is great on the one side because it means you're on the right path. But on the other side, you do realize that this is going to be a big fight. And if people aren't ready to do the big fight and to stand to it, that makes it a lot more difficult to really see which way it's going to roll out. Because passion wins. Passion's big. And one of the things that the campaigns use to divide the left and destroy any opposition to this, and this is very much from the Russian psychological operation stuff, and the left is doing it to itself naturally, is division and stuff like that. And I want to make sure that Mike Bloomberg and Deval Patrick and Marianne Williamson and Yang all agree and understand that what they need to be doing after they lose is everything they can to support the Democratic nominee. And that's what so bothers me, because that was, again, the lesson that we didn't learn in 2016. And if you talk to any of the people, take it to the convention, we can... What? He lost. But that didn't happen. So you're going to see a lot of this coming up next year. And it's clear that Facebook is not really fixing things. So you're going to have a lot of foreign accounts on every news story spouting bullshit. I know the person who runs the Trump campaign, he's not an ethical person. So you'll find that a lot of the money is being funneled into people doing some really sketchy things online. But it's about to get into interesting silly season. I mean, it's nearly 2020, so I'll be gearing up. I'll be doing some more shows. This has been kind of my lull time, to be honest. So been taking advantage of that. But we'll see you guys around, and everybody always keep in touch. Tisa, good to see you dropping by. Hope things are good. Things are pretty chill at the house here. Yeah, this is dangerous, though. Hopefully, when we get the impeachment on the books and the Senate Republicans are looking down at an election and having to vote on this, Corey is... for a little context, Cory Gardner is a senator here in Colorado. He's up for election here in 2020, so he's going to be on the ballot with Trump. So I don't think he's going to turn on him because he's caught again. You got to, throw any kind of euphemism out there if you want. You got to dance with the one that brung you. And if you turn on the Republican base now as a Republican, you're dead. And that's what they all know. And this is the danger of the team style politics. I don't know how to fix that one. Not with all the billionaires running around acting like it doesn't matter which side is which. Because that's what they do. And this is where I think that Bloomberg and them, they think they could run at either party. And Bloomberg probably thinks he could have run it. And Bloomberg probably could have run as a Republican and done all right. He's not going to do well as a Dem. You'll see. So that's a prediction for you. And then the other one, and time for me to stop rambling. Go watch some Disney Plus. Free accounts from friends. Gotta love them. All right, you guys have a great week, month, whatever. Probably talk to you before Christmas. Peace out.